All right, let's dive into one of the biggest stories in business history. We're talking about a true titan, a company whose name basically meant photography for an entire century. Kodak. Seriously, for generations, if you took a picture, you were probably using their camera and their film. But this giant fell, and oh man, its story is packed with some of the most powerful money lessons you'll ever hear.
So here's the central mystery we're going to unravel today. This is the real kicker. The very technology that brought Kodak to its knees, it was actually invented inside their own labs. So, how on earth does a company invent the future, only to get completely buried by it? Let's get into it.
First off, you really can't overstate just how massive Kodak was. I mean, they weren't just a company, they were a cultural force. They pretty much owned the 20th century when it came to images.
At their absolute peak in the 1970s, Kodak had a lock on an almost unbelievable 90% of the film market in the US. Just think about that for a second. 9 out of every 10 photos taken in the entire country were on their film. That's not just market dominance, that's total saturation.
And all that dominance, well, it translated into staggering amounts of money. At its height, Kodak was worth over $28 billion. They employed more than 140,000 people across the globe. They were an absolute powerhouse.
Now, their business model was pure genius. Their founder, George Eastman, perfected this razor and blade strategy. The idea was simple. Sell the cameras, the razors, for cheap, maybe even at a loss. Why? Because you knew you'd make a killing on the stuff people had to keep buying. The film, the developing chemicals, the photo paper. That was the blade, and it was a recurring gold mine.
And this slogan, it was perfect. It captured their whole mission. Photography used to be this complicated, expensive thing for professionals. Kodak made it simple for everyone. They literally invented the Kodak moment, turning fleeting bits of life into memories you could actually hold.
But here's where the story takes a dark turn. The thing that would eventually bring this entire empire down, it didn't come from a competitor. Nope, it was planted right inside Kodak's own research labs.
This is probably the most incredible, most ironic part of the whole story. Back in 1975, a young engineer at Kodak named Steve Sasson created something that would change the world. The first ever portable digital camera. The future arrived, and it knocked on Kodak's door first.
Okay, now to be fair, this first prototype was a monster. I mean, it weighed over 8 pounds, it was as big as a toaster, and the pictures were awful. It took a whole 23 seconds just to capture one grainy black and white image onto a cassette tape. But it worked. It was the proof of concept that digital photography was possible.
So, what happened when Steve Sasson showed this incredible invention to his bosses? Their response became legendary. Basically, that's cute, but don't tell anyone about it. They saw the future, and they were scared to death. Why? Because this thing, this digital camera, it didn't need film. It threatened their golden goose.
And this timeline just shows you the devastating cost of that fear. It wasn't just one bad decision. It was a pattern, a culture of delay that lasted for decades. From burying the invention in '75 to actively vetoing a consumer model in '92, they had every chance to lead the digital revolution. Instead, they chose to protect their past, absolutely paralyzed by the idea of cannibalizing their film sales. By 2012, it was all over.
Now, to really understand how big of a blunder this was, you have to look at their main rival, Fujifilm. They were staring down the exact same digital disruption, but their story could not have ended more differently. This table says it all. It really boils down to how they answered one fundamental question. Who are we? Kodak's answer was, we are a film and photography company. Their identity was tied to a product. Fujifilm had a different answer. They said, we are an advanced chemicals company. Their identity was tied to a core capability. And that one little difference, it changed everything.
And here's a perfect example of what that looks like in practice. This is so smart. Fujifilm's leaders realized that the chemistry needed to keep photos from fading using antioxidants and understanding collagen was incredibly similar to the science of skincare. So what did they do? They took that core expertise and launched a super successful cosmetics line called Astalift. They were reinventing themselves while Kodak was just trying to protect its old turf.
So for Kodak, that refusal to change, that fear of the future, it led right where you'd expect. The giant stumbled, and then it came crashing down.
In January of 2012, the unthinkable happened. The great Eastman Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. You can see the numbers here.
They were deep in the red, owing almost $7 billion, with only about $5 billion in assets. The money machine had officially run out of gas.
So what does Kodak look like today, in 2025? Well, they're still around, but they're a much, much smaller company that you probably never interact with. They're a business-to-business player now, focused on things like commercial printing systems and advanced materials. Ironically, they're back in the chemicals game, just decades too late.
The difference is just staggering. I mean, look at this. They went from a $28 billion icon that was in every home to a $500 million B2B company. This wasn't just a slump. It was a near-total collapse of a corporate empire.
So why do we care? What's the lesson here for us, whether we're entrepreneurs, students, or just trying to build a career? Well, Kodak's story is a timeless warning, a roadmap of what not to do when faced with change.
All right, so here are the 3 big takeaways. Number 1, you have to be willing to cannibalize yourself. You have to be the one to create the thing that makes your current bestseller obsolete, because if you don't, someone else will. 2, define yourself by what you're good at, not by what you sell. What are your core capabilities? And number 3, agility beats legacy every single time. 100 years of success means nothing if you can't pivot when the world changes.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important question. I want you to really think about this for yourself. What's the film business in your own life, in your career, in your company? What's that thing that's comfortable and profitable right now, but you know deep down the future is heading somewhere else? That's the real lesson from Kodak.
Hey, if this story got you thinking and you found it valuable, do us a quick favor and hit that like button. It really helps.
And of course, make sure you subscribe to Money Lessons by History. We break down more of these fascinating stories to find lessons we can all use today.
And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know, what was your single biggest takeaway from the fall of Kodak? Thanks so much for watching.